The church bells that once called the faithful to prayer now tolled only for the dead. In the year 1348, when the Black Death swept through Europe, even God seemed to hide his face. The cathedrals, once filled with incense, song, and light, became tombs of echoing silence. The priests tried at first to keep faith alive. They walked through the streets with crucifixes raised high, blessing the sick, whispering psalms over the dying. But soon their own numbers began to fall. The plague did not care for faith or holy robes. It entered through breath, through touch, through fear. In Avignon, the Pope locked himself between fires, believing the smoke would purify the air. In London, monks carried corpses until they collapsed beside them. In small villages, no one came to hear Mass, not out of rebellion, but because there was no one left to listen. The few who survived watched as priests, once the symbols of divine strength, buried their own brothers with trembling hands. Some began to question everything they had believed. If God is merciful, one friar wrote, then why does he not weep? Others turned desperate, whipping themselves in the streets, crying that the plague was punishment for sin. But no amount of prayer stopped the dying. The holy water turned black with ash. The candles in the churches burned lower and lower until even their light seemed to surrender. And then, one morning, the bells stopped ringing. No one had the strength left to pull their ropes. The silence that followed was heavier than any sermon, a silence that swallowed faith whole. It was said that if you walked into a church during that winter, you could still hear faint whispers, the echo of prayers that never reached heaven. When the bells fell silent, people turned to the earth instead of the sky. The plague had stolen not only lives, but certainty. Once the church had been the pillar of hope. Now it was a grave of unanswered prayers. The people began to ask dangerous questions. If God rules all things, did he send this? Or has he turned away? The priests had no answers. Some confessed that their prayers felt empty, their words hollow. Others clung harder to faith, shouting that repentance would cleanse the world. They marched barefoot through the streets, beating their backs with chains, until the snow turned red beneath their feet. But even their devotion became another form of despair. In the countryside, peasants built their own shrines, praying not to saints, but to the ghosts of their loved ones. They lit candles in the ruins of chapels, whispering to the dead instead of to heaven. And in cities, the rich fled, locking their church doors behind them, while the poor huddled outside, praying through the cracks. The once mighty church fractured, its unity rotted by fear. Yet, amid all this silence, a new kind of faith was born, not in marble halls or golden altars, but in the quiet acts of love that survived the dark. A widow caring for a stranger, a monk writing down the names of the dead so they would not be forgotten, a child lighting a candle for a parent who would never return. These were not miracles, but they were enough. For in a world where even priests lost their prayers, compassion became its own kind of religion. When the plague finally loosened its grip, the churches reopened, but their echo was different. The hymns no longer praised power or punishment. They were songs of remembrance, of fragility, of survival. And though the bells rang once more, they carried the memory of that one year when heaven itself went quiet, when faith did not die, but learned how to suffer.